Hi and welcome back. I've finally had enough time with Destiny 2 The Edge of Fate to give you my comprehensive thoughts on the expansion along with the systematic changes and the raid race. As there's quite a bit to cover, I've made the decision to cut the video into 3 different pieces. Specifically, we're gonna be starting with the first chapter, which is the expansion itself. All the content within it, the Kepler destination, the legend campaign, all of that sort of thing is gonna be here. Then in the next session, we're going to be focusing on the more systematic changes. The portal, tiering, all of these different sort of new gear systems and stats and all of that. In the last section of the video, we're going to be talking about the raid race, the drama relating to that, and all of these sort of things and sort of talking about my thoughts on it. And with all of that, I hope you will enjoy this video, and I'll see you all at the end. To explain Edge of Fate's story in the shortest possible terms, essentially, Oren quits her position as being emissary of the Nine. That's what we see in the trailer. And the Nine invites Ikora and the Guardian to Kepler via throwing a 21st century train car directly at them. Now, when you throw a train car directly at somebody, you usually get their attention. And as such, the Guardian and Ikora go to Kepler. Now, on Kepler, there's also another character, that being Lodi. Now, Lodi is a guy from the 1970s who worked from the United States External Observations, essentially a department that would track aliens. And he got pulled into the future to Kepler by the Nine. On Kepler, he meets the Ionians, who is an old colony ship that landed on Kepler centuries before the collapse. Which means Lodi doesn't know about the collapse yet. He doesn't know anything about the Guardians, about light, about any of these powers when he arrives on Kepler. That's also what makes him a really intriguing character, as he'll be learning these things as we go through the campaign. Now, after we meet Lodi, he will explain to us that Kepler is being held together by the Singularity. And the Singularity is unstable, and a unstable Singularity could mean it would potentially endanger the entire solar system. Lodi also explains that to stabilize the Singularity, we have to collect 4 strangelets, which can be found on Kepler, where there are 2 major factions. There are a group of Vex who we don't know at the time, but they are being led by Maya Sundaresh, the conductor from episode Echoes, along with a faction of Fallen led by an Archon, who worship the Singularity as the Giver. Both of these sort of enemy groups have their own reasons to be there. Maya Sundaresh is there because she wants to draw power from the Singularity, and the Archon is there because he wants to speed up the Singularity. The thing neither of us knows is that 3, one of the 9, is actually the Singularity. It is his death they are drawing power from. We don't realize that at the time, but Maya Sundaresh does know that. This is also where the campaign sort of splits up into becoming something super interesting, as you can pick each of the strangelet as your path to go, and they will each give you different upgrades and specific Kepler abilities, such as Matter Spark turning into a ball, Matter Morph being able to eat the plant and then throw some strand stuff out, and so on. They all have their own unique purpose and unlock new puzzle abilities for you, which you can then later combine to grab different chests. The one thing that I have a big issue with here is that these abilities gets forced down your throat more than Strand did when it originally came out. It is insane how much they want you to play with these things. Everywhere there's some become the ball here, eat a green plant there, read some new Ionian text there. It is a lot of just using these abilities over and over and over, and they are not necessarily bad abilities. I think it's great that Bungie are taking more risk and trying new things, but I also think that these things shouldn't be forced this hard down our throat next time. I do like Matter Spark, but there's a cooldown on it when you're playing with your friends, which makes no sense. If you turn into a ball, then your friends can immediately turn into a ball after you until they've completed the campaign. And I think things like that, small undercooked things, are the reason why this expansion really ends up being negatively reviewed. As an entire thing, the story is fantastic here, and the gameplay isn't that far off. As you go through the campaign, it is revealed more and more just how much the Nine have been manipulating you from the start. Not just in the expansion, but throughout the entirety of Destiny. It is very much so shown very best in a cutscene with Ikora, where you see her original death before the collapse. Essentially, she was hit by a train, just for the Traveler to revive her so she could be here in this very moment. From the very beginning, she was a pawn in the Nine's game. And the same thing with Lodi. It was made specifically for this purpose. It is both revealed to them that they are sort of here for these very specific things. And it's honestly done really well. The cutscene is incredible. The cinematography here is top notch for Destiny. I really gotta be honest. And the voice works is top notch for Destiny. It's just really good. Both Ikora's voice act, but especially also Lodi's. It's so fucking good. And the point where it peaks is when Lodi discovers the collapse. He discovers that there was a collapse, that his family is probably dead. And I will just let you experience that one thing for yourself right here and right now.
So, Maya wants to return us to the Golden Age. The Ionians haven't talked about it. When was the Golden Age?
It ended centuries ago. There's reason to suspect the Ionian ancestors arrived before it began. Imagine watching the world end from the edge of the system.
Ikora, when was all this? Did the collapse happen in my time? Did my family die in an apocalypse? Or did they get to grow old and die happy? I need to know that they live a full life, even if I'm not there to see it.
How long ago? How long? When did the world end?
So many records were wiped out. We don't have an exact number. Hundreds of years ago.
They're gone. Are you kidding me? Just like that? There was an apocalypse, and it's ancient history, and that's it. I mean, didn't someone think that to etch a date in a stone or something helpful? There's no time capsules, there's no bunkers, just gone?
And I can't undo any of it.
Lodi. That would have never been possible. Surely you know this.
No. I don't know.
You're not the first person to wake up lost. I'll tell you what I tell the others. The Golden Age rose, and fell, and then so did the Dark Age. There were few of us then, and survival barely eked out. But we did. Humans live. We built a city. In time, there will be more.
There were hundreds.
I know. Can you tell me what you do remember?
What does it matter now? I'm sorry. That was... sorry.
It's such a simple question, but I know.
I remember stars. I used to drive out in the country to see them. As bright as they were hundreds of years ago. Oh, always used to take my breath away. Just looking up, realizing all over again how much more was out there that nobody saw. Guess the stars aren't such a wonder anymore. Out here.
There are still mysteries.
Now, again, this is exactly why I say I think Lodi is such an interesting character. He's voiced so well, and he's written really well. He is not the annoying side character like Nimbus was. He is an incredibly integral point to the entirety of this expansion, as he is the person who's set to become the next emissary, and he is voiced incredibly well. He's honestly kind of charismatic when you hear him sort of talk in the dialogue sections and stuff like that. Like, it is a really well written character here, and I think that cannot be understated. I am really impressed with what they did with Lodi, and even with Oren, but especially Lodi. He is so good. Continuing the story that we were on. Essentially, after you've collected all the Force Rangelets, the 9 then possesses Oren and Lodi to speak directly to us, essentially asking us to stop the singularity, the big black hole that was created by a member of the 9-3's death. And we go in there and do exactly that. We stop that. Meanwhile, the conductor, Maya Sundaresh, is trying to draw power from that exact thing, from the singularity. After finding the Archon, we have to make the very difficult choice to drop the hull of the Drifter's ship directly down into the black hole. In doing so, we oldify the Drifter. He gets a little bit grayer hair, but weirdly enough, after dropping that thing, it comes back. It just appears there as if it was never gone. Another just mysterious power of the 9. Now, free dying will obviously create a power vacuum, which I assume is where the next sort of expansion will take place. I cannot understate how much I've undercooked the plot here. This is just my best ability in trying to explain to you what the fuck is going on. But I will say, this sounds confusing, but it's so good in game. It is explained really well, and the voice acting work, the mocapping work, all of it is just top notch. It's really, really fucking good. Like, for once I am playing this for the story and the story alone. It is such an interesting plot to sort of go into and delve into this entire thing with the 9. Unfortunately, that doesn't transfer to all of Kepler. Unfortunately, Kepler is yet another antisocial destination where there is no other Guardians on. You won't find your Blueberry doing a public event or anything like that. However, Kepler does try to make use of Matter Morph, Matter Spark, and so on, through forcing you to use it to solve a bunch of the different puzzles. It is completely fine. They give tier 2 loot, which is to say it is kinda on the low side of things, even if you do these puzzles. On the highest possible difficulty, that at the moment being mythic, you still only get tier 2. And that is honestly baffling. How in the fuck do you expect people to do these puzzles, which might not themselves be hard, but the enemies sure as fuck are tanky, and then get tier 2 loot for it? I don't get it. It simply doesn't compute with me. Now, that being said, Kepler also has another focus on world materials. Essentially, the crafting materials are back, or rather not crafting, but just trading. You have your arcane dust, all of these sort of things making another return. And they make a return specifically so you can pick them up and trade them in at the vendor in the sort of landing area for rolls and weapons and so on. I actually really like the system. It encourages a bit of exploration and just picking up the destinations materials when you see them to get more rolls and more guaranteed slightly higher tier weapons. It is a nice system, and I honestly genuinely really like. And I think that is one of the things Kepler does really well, as it does actually make me want to just go out there to pick up more stuff, so I can go in and buy specific guns or whatever at a slightly higher tier. It's great. I enjoyed that part of Kepler. Kepler also comes with a matchmake activity, which is essentially just a public event then a boss fight called Sieve. Sieve was, before the day 1 raid, the fastest way to earn tier 3 armor, as it is a guaranteed drop there depending on your light level, so running that became sort of a meta for me and my friends. It is the only area where you can meet randoms on Kepler, and that, in my opinion, is a bit of a shame, as that sort of social element is completely gone on Kepler. Now, Sieve itself is only there for like an hour 30 minutes, and then it's gone for another 2 hours, and then it comes back. It is very much like a Vex incursion, with the exception of the timer being in-game this time, which is great. I actually kind of like Sieve for the simplicity that it is. It is still a completely passable game mode for what it's worth. Kepler also has side quests. These take the form of go here, scan this, do this, and so on. It is not interesting whatsoever gameplay wise. They are really your box standard side quests for the most part. Kill this group of enemies, do this, do that. The interesting part of the side quest is that you get lore, and you get some damn good lore and some damn good character building through them, which I do appreciate that. And I gotta admit, I really enjoy that sort of part of it, just getting more story. And that's another good thing Kepler does, as it has dialogue boxes now, which is completely new to Destiny. Now you can actually get some more world building that isn't just a wall of text you have to go through. We need more of that, please. I think it is really cool. Just like I think the small touch where when you have a person talking to you, you can actually pull them out now and have them sort of be pulled up on a bigger screen instead of having them on comms. It's a nice small little thing that just adds a lot of world building. It's great. I genuinely really enjoy that. And overall, I really enjoy this expansion. I think this is one of the best things Destiny has right now in terms of immersion. It is a Kepler, because Kepler isn't a bad destination. It is just that being forced to use Matterspark so fucking much is a pain in the ass. I do not want to ball that hard that often. Sometimes I can be a ball, sure, but I don't want it to be everything I do on Kepler. And do not get me wrong, even Sieve has small side objectives you can unlock through using the ball mode. It is really not that great. I don't enjoy as much, but that is mainly because it has been forced upon us. Next up, we're going to be talking about the more systematic changes that this expansion brought to Destiny 2. Now, to begin with, let's talk about armor. Specifically, now armor has perks. Said perks can be activated depending on the amount of pieces from that armor set you have equipped. Right now we have up to 4 pieces, so you can always also run with an exotic. As an example, one that was shown before the release of the DLC was the Bushido set perks, which the first one states that final blows with freshly drawn or reloaded weapons heal you. This is already a quite decent combo, and there is one that I really like, which essentially shoots out a wave of kinetic damage if you break a combatant's shield. It's really nice, and there are quite a few of these, and they can be really, really potent. Another huge change to armor was that the mobility, resilience, recovery, discipline, and intellect along with strength stat are now completely deprecated. They do not exist anymore. They have been converted to a new stat system, where mobility got converted to weapons, resilience got converted to health, recovery got converted to class, discipline got converted to grenade, intellect got converted to super, strength got converted to melee. These new stats also feature new bonuses. As an example, the new mobility stat being weapons also buffs your weapons, including both ammo generation but also outright damage. You can get, I think it's up to 15% extra damage for maxing out that stat. Resilience being health now gives you, well, more health and faster regen on your health. Recovery being class gives you more class energy and an overshield when you use your class, like your class ability. And discipline becoming grenade, giving you both more grenade energy but also more grenade damage. I think it's all the way up to 50%. And intellect becoming super, which gives you faster super energy, and I mean much faster super energy. We are talking you can spam supers now in like a damage phase. And along with that, if you max that stat out, you get 50% extra super damage. And that is, again, really potent. Strength becoming melee, that of course increases melee generation and of course also your melee damage. These are sort of the new perks. Another big change is that now you can have up to 200 in each stat. Of course you'll have to roll the perfect set of gear, and that becomes a question then, how do you roll that gear? Well, the armor mods are gone, there's no more discipline armor. Instead we have weird armor mods called Paragon and so on. They give you two different focuses, so there can be a main focus on intellect, a secondary focus on weapons, and then you get a third stat that is sort of random, and you get them in that order. So the one that is the main focus of that mod becomes like the biggest stat, and then the second one, your secondary stat, becomes the second biggest on that armor piece, and then a third is randomly picked. In general, you would just want to max out whatever your build is focused on. As an example, for me it is mainly grenade, because I am playing a lot of warlock where well is really only a thing where I need 100 super stat. As well doesn't get a damage increase but an extension to the timer of it. And the reason why I want something else like grenade instead of more intellect is that I want to buff the damage of my grenade with things like starfire. It is a really good change. It really heavily leans into build crafting and I enjoy it a fuck ton. I will say there are a few stats that seems to be kinda overtuned, or rather completely necessary for high endgame content. That being super and weapons. And the reason why they are so important is that weapons literally makes you have more ammo and do more damage, and super makes you get multiple supers at damage phase and increases the super damage by 50%. So the question becomes, how do you see what loot to keep and what not to keep now that there are all these new stats and so on? Well, there's a new tiering system in the game. Essentially, there is tier 1 to 5, 5 being the best, 1 being the worst. So, the higher tier, the more stats you have on your armor. And on weapons, they essentially become a shiny from Into the Light or some such update. Essentially, they have upwards of 6 perks. They also have a unique skin or shader ornament, whatever you want to call it on. And on top of that, they also have a kill effect that you can equip. It is really cool to see Bungie lean into this. I genuinely really like the system. However, so far it seems to be tied directly to your power level, as you have to level up not just to play harder activities, but to get a chance at getting the higher tiers. You can play Master when you unlock it, and you will still be getting tier 2 gear. The reason being is that your power level is simply not high enough to get tier 3. And currently, as we are speaking, there's a pretty good chance that getting consistent tier 5 gear is locked until you can level up to 500, which you can first do in Ashen Iron, which is out in 3 months-ish time. That means we are time gated to get the best version of our gear. That is completely fucking stupid. I cannot believe I have to say this, but that is a bad decision. You are not making people come back to play in Ashen Iron because they can grind tier 5s. You're just making people not bother with grinding now because they don't want to grind for a tier 4 where they can just wait a few months and grind at tier 5. It is incredible that it has to be said. It is such a bafflingly bad decision. And I don't understand how that could exist when we have just talked about some pretty good changes and a really cool tiering system. And that is on top of that also being placed onto the raid. The new raid has tiers instead of craftable loot, which is great. And you can complete challenges to get higher tier guns. Again, fantastic. You get a bunch of those sort of challenges done and then you can get up to a tier 4 gun. Why not tier 5? Well, that seems to be locked until the epic raid, which is out again in Ash and Iron. So you have to wait again to be able to grind the best versions of the loot that you have. Right now, that means that at least for me, I'm not gonna be bothering with grinding a lot of power. I'm just gonna log in maybe once a day, maybe once a week to do my sort of bonus drops in the portal activities, and we'll be getting to those. Because there's no point in going hard on the grind. It was fun before. I grinded a lot before this video because I wanted to get day 1 ready, and then I wanted to just grind more so I had a better time explaining it to you guys, and now we are here. And what's even worse is that when you get to these higher caps of tiers that you have to unlock through just playing and grinding power, you get capped at underleveled, meaning that you will be 50 under in some activities and you can't do shit about it. Which also just means that the light levels that you've grinded are completely pointless, other than giving you access to potentially getting higher tier loot. It is genuinely a question of why. Why was this decision made? Who decided on making these decisions? Why? It makes no sense. Why do you want people to grind power levels to get higher tier loot when you're gonna cap them under-leveled anyway? It is just so baffling. And nowadays, if you get to the cap, it will be taken away at the next expansion. You are gonna have to grind up again. And on top of that, the new sort of infusion currency is called unstable cores. You get them through dismantling things that are above level 200. Virtually, I actually don't see a problem with the new level grind, in the sense that if we have to grind levels anyway per expansion, the only difference between grinding them like this, where they've been taken away at the end of an expansion, and grinding them like we used to, where the number would just get bigger, is exactly that. The number gets bigger in the old way, as you'd still have to grind to access the same activities again and again and again. This is the same loop that people have been tired of for years, and it's still representative in the game. And on top of that, now it's even worse, as you can't get the highest tier possible loot even if you play on the hardest of qualities. It is just a baffling decision. I do not understand the tiering system and why it's made like that. That being said, I hope when Ash and Iron comes out that I will love it, because I think these systems are really cool. Another really big issue that I have with the tiering system is that it is exclusive to new content. That means if you want to play, let's say, Sundered Doctrine, it doesn't have any tiering. And that, if the purpose was to make this game easier for new people to come into, that is just confusing. Why the fuck is this gear different from the new gear? It makes no sense. If you're gonna include these systems, then include them broadly. I don't mind Bungie reusing content. I don't mind them picking up a new dungeon, and then they're like, oh, we enhanced it and now you can get all of these new things and the guns have new perks and stuff. It's fine. But come on, we can do better than this. We should have these fundamental systems included in all the content, purely because it makes no sense not to. They're there anyway. We could just include them, and I don't understand why we don't. Because things like the new power delta has been included in all content. Now, if you have no idea what that means, essentially if you are playing all dungeons and raids, you will be capped at being 10 under every single time, which is a baffling decision that Bungie made, where they kept you underneath the level of the raid, and I particularly don't really mind it. I think it's fine. However, the worst issue is that you can't turn it off. You don't get a higher tier weapon or anything better for doing it. That is just the default way it is now, and that is just not great, especially because it sort of kills the casual way of getting into raiding, as now you have to be ready to play under level before you can participate in a raid. In my opinion, a fix to that will be allow this to just sort of be a pickable option. As an example, in the future when we do have tiers on most of the content in the game, it could be a thing where you get a tier 2 gun if you play 10 underleveled. However, you can just turn that off, not play underleveled at all. That way, we can also just have new people go into the older content. And I think that's a good choice. I think new people should be allowed to come into this older content so they can experience it and just see it, get the exotic. Because right now, the virtual only reason why you would revisit old content is just to grab the exotic and fuck up. And that's just, in my opinion, a little bit bad. And I think that's rough. And I hope that these changes will take effect, because, simply put, I don't see how I can guide somebody through who is completely new to the game to these sort of under-leveled experiences. I really don't see it, as it just will become a much harder time to guide, as you will have to be able to pull your own weight much more than you did before. Probably the biggest change that has come to Edge of Fate, and one of the things that I expected to hate going into the expansion, was the portal. The portal is essentially your new directory screen. It is where you will launch all activities in the game, period. And it is pretty okay. Essentially, you have your solo playlist, which are small solo missions that usually take the form of run through the slow sector with added objectives. And I have actually found myself quite enjoying them. Then you have your fire team ups, which can be anywhere from all battlegrounds, strikes to onslaught. And again, I find them to be quite nice. They are very much so fun to play, and I don't mind them doing that. You even have small bonuses on some of them where you get multiple drops or certain gear drops on certain things, and it's nice to have that, and it's nice that it's being displayed. I also super fucking love Pinnacle Ops, which are all the exotic missions that you can now play for both new gear but also just power levels. And if you don't have the exotic, you can actually just go in there and play them and get the exotic from that mission. It is a pretty interesting system, and I quite like the way it sort of encourages me to play. And you also do have the same thing but for PvP. There are, however, issues with the portal. One, it is simply not as unique as the directory. The old director was just so much more unique looking. You had all the planets and this sort of map style, and I really loved it. I think it's such a shame that we have gone away from that design to this more Netflix slideshow-esque type of thing. It is more user-friendly, sure, but I genuinely dislike sort of looking at it in comparison. And that being said, I do think it works pretty well, and I think it is easy to get into. It will probably be much better for new players than trying to fix the directory. However, this is also where another pretty big problem comes in. You see, they have not included all content in the portal. What do I mean? The only planet you can access from the portal currently is Kepler. You cannot switch it to Nessus or any of the other ones. You can't access any raids or dungeons directly from the portal, which is a baffling decision. This is the place where all the content is supposed to be, and now it isn't. It's just a really weird decision. It is up there with making these solo-only destinations. I don't understand why this is the direction we are moving, but whatever. I think it is an incredibly weird decision to not include dungeons and raids, as why wouldn't you? They are literally some of the top tier content, and there is a button for the new raid that doesn't launch the new raid. Why? It makes no sense. It really is irritating. It is something that I've been thinking about, as I quite like the old director. But I also know from my new player perspective when you come into this game, that shit is confusing as fuck. I mean, come on. It is outdated, and if you buy the expansion, God forbid, every film will start to blink at once. You should, matter of fact, in my opinion, lock people out so they can't play an expansion that they haven't gotten to yet. So you are forced to start at Shadowkeep and then continue upwards. But again, if you ask me for my opinions, you should make a few of them free to grab people's attention. However, at the moment as we're speaking, I kinda am caught in the middle of the portal. I wish there was more included there. I like what we have already, but I just wish there was more. Just outright more content to go through. As personally, I really like being able to sort of customize the difficulty of all the missions that I play. I love being able to play all the exotic missions again and feel like I'm getting something new out of it. It's nice, it's fun, and it's a good way to reuse content when we don't just directly slap it in there. Give it some new rewards and all that, and then you can use them. A lot of the exotic missions in this game are quite good. They deserve to be played more, and I'm happy that now I feel like I have a reason to do so. However, with that also comes the big disclaimer that if you customize your own difficulty on, as an example, Fireteam Ops, you don't get any matchmaking. Why? It is literally called Fireteam Ops. Usually, Fireteam means that you are in the team. It means that you will be put together with some teams. But here, you just fucking aren't. And why? Why? I don't get it. I was never a fan of playing with other people in a strike, as an example. But I do think the fact of the matter is, a lot of people were, and a lot of people missed that. And I personally miss the social aspects of Destiny entirely. As we don't have people on Kepler, we are becoming much more isolated in Destiny. It is becoming a single-player experience at this point. Not really, but you get my point. On top of that, I am genuinely and super baffled by the fact that the solo ops are really fun, actually. I genuinely really enjoy them. They're small, bite-sized missions that you can just go in, 5-10 minutes maybe, not really. Sometimes it's free if you're somewhat optimized. And then you just go through them and you get loot at the end. It's nice, it's a good system, and it has its own unique loot pools and stuff. It's really fun to play and it's really fun to look into. just add the rest of the game to it at this point if that's the way you want to go through. But I do want to say, make Destiny a more social game. It should be a priority in my opinion. Lastly, you heard me talk about ammo generation when I was talking about the weapon stat. Essentially, ammo generation is the new way we get ammo within PvE in Destiny, and I quite enjoy it. Essentially, it's a meter that fills up, and when that meter is full, there pops an ammo brick. It can be a green meter or a purple meter. You have each and you fill them up at different speeds. The more weapons that you have, I think up to 100, the faster you get ammo. That is a pretty awful thing, as it basically makes it a requirement to have that weapon stat, otherwise you just don't have enough heavy. It's weird. I really don't understand why they would go that direction with it, but I do like the idea of deterministic ammo. And in general, I actually think it feels kinda okay. However, with the delta scaling that we were talking about earlier, it ends up not really mattering, because when you are on Mythic tier on Kepler, enemies will eat your heavy. You simply do not have enough. That means that exotics such as Outbreak really takes front and center space for being the best go-to choice for it, as you can simply hold the shoot button in with your infinite ammo and watch the health slowly disappear. And that is still a much more efficient way to kill him than doing all of your heavy swaps as you run out of heavy ammo. It's either that or doing an Outbreak swap afterwards. I personally really dislike the delta scaling. I think it ruins a lot of build crafting, but I also think on top of that, it really shows the demand for higher weapon stat and super stat, as that is the single best way you're gonna get more damage. Another thing worth mentioning is the replacement for GMs. Essentially, that is now conquests. Conquests are different missions that can be the Whisper mission, it can be a strike, it can be any of these that you see within the portal that are taken up and made into a quote-unquote special mission. And those special missions drop more gear. Essentially, the lower ones will give you 4 tier 3 pieces of gear, and the highest one gives you 4 tier 5 pieces of gear. They are pretty cool in effect, and I really enjoy the inclusion of them. However, there is issues here too, as there is a cooldown on how many you can complete. What that cooldown is, I wouldn't be able to fucking tell you. I completed mine a few days ago, and it still isn't playable. I cannot do another conquest, even though I want to, and I really dislike that. Of course, there are other ones I can delve into, there are 6 in total, but the ones that I would want to play, like Devil's Slayer, I just can't play it right now. And it makes me wonder why. Is this cooldown a weekly thing? And if it is, then that is at least somewhat better than my current theory, which is that you get to do these once an expansion. And I will let you know once that is entirely confirmed in the comment, or at least once I know if it's weekly or not. I'll let you know in the comments, but like, why have a cooldown on them? With GMs, I can farm them as much as I wanted, and it was great. It was a fun system. Why would you want to limit that? I genuinely don't understand. It's such a baffling decision. However, I do like most of the system changes. I think conquests, if they were farmable, would be pretty fun. I also really enjoy the fact that we can play old exotic missions now instead of grinding some strike or whatever. And I think it's great that you have a solo ops playlist that actually manages to feel kind of fun and fulfilling and fresh. It's nice to see these changes take effect and actually be alright. I will say though, I genuinely do not understand why things like the bonuses of gear that you can get are exclusive to you. Essentially, if you have a teammate or somebody you're playing with, you might not have the same bonus drops, and it just makes it really confusing to play through. I do like them though, and I think this is the right path to go down. It's just unfortunate that it comes out in a form that is very half-assed. It feels like there's a lot missing here. In my opinion, when you include these system-wide changes, they should be game-wide. Tiering, that should happen in Sunder Doctrine and all the other old content too. It shouldn't be something that only exclusively happens in newer content. Especially when I can see that you have been in there and you have included things like delta scaling. I also don't understand why we have to have these sort of portal systems where not everything is in there. You can't launch a dungeon, you can't launch the raids from there. You can't even go to half of the fucking planets in the game from the portal. Why? Just include it in there. It would be so easy, you just need to include a little badge down by the solo ops and all that, and have it be raids and dungeons, and then have a little switch button where the planets are so you can switch to different planets. That would solve it. I also don't understand why we have to move into these more anti-social spaces where you can have matchmaking to half of the fire team matchmake things. It's things like that that makes me wonder how well thought out this really was. I genuinely like the systems, but there is change that needs to happen here, and a lot of it. And hopefully we'll see that relatively quickly. But that being said, I do like it, and I think this is the right path. And with all of that said, there is still more changes to talk about. The very last system change I want to talk about is not really a change, it's more of a meta thing, and that is the fact that new gear bonuses exist. Essentially, there is a set of featured exotics, and then the new gear that gets a inherent bonus for existing. We are talking around 10% damage on your heavies, 15% on special and primaries, but where I find it most outrageous, where I find it really fucking annoying, is in the scoring of points when you're doing portal activities. You see, the higher score you get, the better loot you get from the portal activity. But there's a reward multiplier that goes up by equipping higher level things, which is fine, but also newer things. So if it isn't featured or new, you just get an inherent devaluing of old stuff. Like if you wear old armor, you're not gonna get the same reward multiplier as me, which means that you will not get an A tier for the same rating I might get an A tier from. It is so baffling. Why do that? Remove this shit immediately. What the fuck? It should really not have to be said that this is an obvious bad decision. It is soft sunsetting all over again. It is really dumb, and these inherent sort of negatives to old gear should just all be removed. You shouldn't have to use new gear or some featured exotic to make your builds because Bungie said so. I genuinely really dislike that sort of thing in games. Either just remove them or just don't have these systems. It's okay not to have them. You do not need to remove our gear, which is what I prefer. And I think that is really where it's at. I think just remove the damage benefits and the health benefits to new armor. Just don't have them be there. And on top of that, remove the reward multiplier. Just set it at whatever the max is normally. Just have it be that the entire time so you can't really feel the change. Make the shit unified. Because it's already a hell to try to set a portal activity up for everybody to get the same reward. But when the reward multiplier is this different, and it means quite a bit, it can be the difference between running 3 or 1 modifier. Then it's like, what do you want me to do? Like, of course, if I only need 1 modifier, I'm gonna apply 1, but then my friend doesn't notice that he needs like 3 or 4. It's so weird. I really hate these systems. They need to be changed almost ASAP. Like, this needs to be the top priority. Anyway, now time for the most interesting discussion. The raid. To be clear, I want to make sure everybody knows I love Desert Perpetual. I think it's one of the coolest raids we have had in a while. Anywhere from the visual style being 9 themed and the weapons looking weird in all sorts of shapes and forms, I really like it. I really like it. And I like the perks on the guns, they're good and they're worth grinding actually for once. I also really adore the fact that it is a non-linear raid. What that means is that the raid itself can be completed in any order. So you could start with a completely different encounter than somebody else, and you can go through each of the encounters in whatever order you want to, with the exception of the final boss, as that will always be the final boss. That is until you beat the raid once. If you beat the raid once, you unlock the option to go directly in and fight the final boss instead of doing the rest of the raid, which is great for people who just want to get the exotic and get the fuck out. I really enjoy this design philosophy, and I hope to see more on this. Non-linearity is something that I never thought I'd enjoy in a raid, but I really do. I hope I'll see this applied to a dungeon too, just to something else. It's so cool. Now, that being said, the biggest pain point I think of this entire raid has been contest, as contest was much harder than anything we have ever seen before in the game. It will push teams to the other limits of the capabilities, both in terms of what the game can do, but also in terms of what you can perform. Essentially, the meme of having to like swap to 4 different loadouts doing damage was real here. Editor me here, so it came out while I was working on this video that roughly 70% of the raid clears on contest mode were cheated, which things like network limiting where they could get more supers or just avoid wipe mechanics entirely. And there are some very obvious ones in there, including people who apparently 3-manned the entire raid in a few minutes on contest. And I mean, there's a guy who completed the entire raid apparently with a blue rocket launcher on contest. Absolute gamers. No, there's obvious. It's obvious. They cheated. They fucking cheated. What do you want me to say? But that being said, it's one of those stories that broke very recently, and I think it adds towards the entire point that I've been trying to get at, that I think a lot of the bosses might have been a little bit overtuned, as at least with more normal clears, it wouldn't have been this staggeringly obvious that there were this many cheaters. Even then, it also speaks to a lack of security on Bungie's part. Cheating has been an issue for a while, and Bungie recently fired more of the security team. It is not a good look. Now back to the video. There were bosses you had to do that on, or at least it felt like you had to, as the choice was either between that or having the best possible armor stats that you had to grind before the raid to go in there to spam super shoes in Thunderlord. That was another thing you could do. For me and my team, on a personal basis, we didn't get the clear. We didn't even kill one boss. And I will personally argue that it is probably a bit of a skill issue on our part. I mean, come on now. But I did also believe that the bosses are a little bit too chunky. I want to make it clear though, I am not mad about not clearing. That it is what it is. It's a fucking PNG. But the bosses being so chunky that I have seen teams that normally clear within the first 20 hours-ish. Or even some of my personal friends like DuffGG, the guy behind the Destiny 2 GeoGuessr, who's super optimizing DPS, not being able to clear a boss is just a sign of how hard this actually is to me. For me personally, I believe that for me to sort of try contest, I needed to be slightly down-tuned. And that is because this raid has been tuned for the top of the top. And I don't mind that at all. If that is the way Bungie wants to do it, I think that is a good design philosophy for contest. However, if you want more people to play contest, it has to be a tad bit easier. I don't see a lot of people going back to contest if this is where we continue to sort of be put. And that is not to say I don't mind DPS checks. I actually much prefer boss encounters over simple puzzle encounters, as I think the satisfaction of killing a big bad guy is just much more rewarding than just solving the oracles in Vault of Glass. And I have cleared a few contests as well. Do not make a mistake I am completely washed and I've never played another contest raid. I have a few of them. Some of my favorites were Kingsfall, where I think the difficulty sort of peaked. I really liked the way that it was designed, where it didn't feel like it took millennia to clear, but there were hard encounters in Kingsfall. That being said, I would not mind this extreme approach to difficulty in contest as well. If that is the route we're gonna go, I am simply gonna start to watch it instead. Because my god, have I heard it was a great experience to look at. And having seen some of the VODs from Mr. Ruffles, who was the world's last team after 60 hours or over 60 hours of straight playing this, who also got the clear even though he didn't get the emblem. Massive respect for it, by the way. Dude started 6 months ago. What an absolute fucking legend. And I really, really enjoy that sort of thing. That is the sort of thing I live for. These sort of stories don't come all too often. And I think these really difficult raids, they sort of come more often than they don't. And I really enjoyed that. I enjoyed the viewing experience much more than the playing experience. And if that is the way things are gonna go to continue, I'm all here for watching it, but I'm not here to play it. That's for fucking sure. That being said, I think Desert Perpetual is really fun. And I think the only issue I've had with the raid race, period, really, has been the fact that there was a lot of screen blockers, which I don't like. I think the idea of starting up a stream, then hiding your screen, turning it entirely black or something, and then playing the raid, while still having the live viewers there just so you can harvest money off them, it's just a little bit baffling, as you do have the option to complete the raid without being on stream, which I think is a much better option and a much safer option if you are scared that something might get leaked or some mechanics come out from your team. Just don't stream it at that point. I am okay with doing what you can to win, but I think taking a stance against especially that sort of thing where it's completely blocking out the screen is supposed to also be a thing, in my own opinion. As quite fairly, I think a lot of the experience with a day one raid and where a lot of the hype from it comes is that there are memories, even for the viewers, that get created during the day one raid. As an example, I will never in my life forget Sweatsicle's sandwich doing Vault in the original Last Wish. I really still remember that sandwich being there on the table while they did Vault, and it was just that one clear and then he could eat. And it took forever to do. That was really fun. And memories like that don't come too often for viewers. And I think it's a shame to rob them of it while sort of just hiding your screen, as I think personally, most of the people who do hide their screens who are that competitive could get the entire thing without hiding their screen. They don't have to do it. It makes no sense. I don't understand why they decide to go for especially screen hiding. However, with all that said, I think Desert Perpetual and the Raid Race is gonna be one of those unforgettable ones. Even if I didn't personally clear, I still enjoyed it from a viewer's perspective. While I personally dislike the sheer girthiness of the bosses, I am okay with that being the contest mode start. It just means that it probably isn't for me anymore, and that's okay. I don't need a fucking PNG, I'll be fine. And I do also really think it's impressive to see people clear these things. With that being said, I hope you all enjoyed this video. This has been quite a bit longer as I wanted to get my comprehensive thoughts of the Edge of Fate out instead of keeping some of it and then making multiple videos. I would rather make one video that is big that I talk about all my thoughts about it than make multiple smaller ones. And this is sort of that one big video. I hope you enjoyed that video, and I hope you are enjoying the Edge of Fate, as I genuinely do think it is a decent expansion. I do think a lot of people went into this expecting something big, and it isn't that, but I think it has put a lot of the groundwork in place for a much better game in the future. That being said, I don't know if there's a future for Destiny. That is something that only time will tell. I do enjoy the game though, and I do enjoy a lot of the changes, even though some of it is really stupid, like not including all of the content in the portal or have all the content tiered, or even just having tier 5s be accessible from the get-go if you grind enough. I like the game though, and I still do. And I want that to be clear, I still think Destiny has the best gunplay of any shooter out there. And it has some of the most fun grinding loot thing, period. I have played more Destiny in the last week than I did almost the entirety of the last year of content. I really enjoy the armor set grinds and the armor changes, and I enjoy the build crafting that has come with that. The only thing I dislike is really just the tier 5 being knocked away. I don't understand that a lot. I think narratively the expansion was really great. I think Kepler was a fun destination. I personally am alright with Matter Spark. I just wish there wasn't a cooldown on the activation of it on the little thing that you stand on when you're playing together. I also really wish that it wasn't shoved this hard down our throats. And I think that should be the biggest lesson to learn to make another expansion. You can have all of the unique mechanics and ideas that you want. Just don't shove it down people's throats. Having it a bit, having to go into the ball form a little bit is fine. Having to go to the ball form 8 times a mission is probably a little bit overdone at that point. At that point, let's just not do it anymore. But with all that said, Edge of Fate is good. I enjoyed it quite a bit. But I also understand if you're holding off at the moment. If you're already not super positive looking at what you have seen. I don't think you should throw your money at the expansion. It's a little bit too expensive in my own opinion. And I will say, on a personal level, it will probably be a better idea if you're really interested in this sort of game. See what Renegades offers, as I think that will be a much more flashy expansion once all of these systems and all of these changes have sort of been flattened out. But with all of that said, I hope you all enjoyed this video. It has taken a lot longer to make than I expected to, and it's become a lot longer than I expected it to. So I'll see you all in the next one, and I hope you all have a great day, and, if you liked it, do the YouTube stuff. Have a wonderful day ahead of you, and I'll see you all later. Bye.